Welcome to the Emancipation Nation, episode 148. I'm Dr. Celia Williamson, and today I have Ena Lucia Mariaca, and she's going to be talking about anti-trafficking work from some of the things that she's been involved in. For example, she was a member at one point working with members of Parliament where she conducted some statistical research, some policy writing, some human rights advocacy work. She also participated in creating a database that helped to support Bill C-310, which was a bill in Canada, and it had to do with the prosecution of people who committed crimes against children and human trafficking offenses for people even outside Canada's borders. And I'm interested in learning more about that. Right now, Ena is working on her research on, get this, male victims, which we need to know a lot more about, and survivors of sexual abuse, human trafficking, sexual exploitation, and just working on male victim identification indicators and unique needs of male survivors and their experiences with childhood sexual exploitation. Did I describe that accurately, Ena?
Yes, you did. Thank you very much.
Anything we need to add, or did we cover it?
Oh, I think that's pretty good. And I would love to go into it more during this interview.
Oh, awesome. Good. So tell us, because we are starved for information about male victims. So what have you found in your research? First of all, how did you start your research?
So this has been a very long journey and coming to this point in my research. It's actually been about 10 years doing this in this field. I started with the government of Canada, as you said, traveling all over the world, like Cambodia, and seeing children of trafficking and working with the NGOs to see how we can better help with that. So this research was very inspired to fill in those gaps in the research, to know what is missing and what do we really need to look into. And it was actually through my work with Interpol where I discovered a research document that talked about how boys and infants and toddlers were getting the worst forms of abuse and torture online. And I just was absolutely heartbroken, and I really wanted to do something about that. So that is why I nosedived into doing male victims and survivors in my research. And so that is where I have come now.
I think that's what I wanted to remember to mention that's critical, is that you interned for Interpol and then you worked at Interpol. Can you tell people what Interpol is and what they do?
Yes, this is the International Police Organization, and they do work internationally with police cooperation, capacity building worldwide, training, as well as their global databases and notices. And these are very important aspects, especially when you talk about human trafficking and crimes against children, because these are, the people that are looking at the cases globally to help stop traffickers and to hopefully rescue survivors.
Yeah, this is like the world police. I don't know. This is like something I would see in a movie, but you actually work there. That's very cool. And then how did you get interested in, looking at male victims?
Yeah, so for male victims and male survivors, I got interested in this work because as a researcher, I love filling in those gaps in the research. And for myself personally, for this master's degree that I'm doing, I wanted it to have an impact, and I wanted to make sure that I wasn't wasting my time repeating research that has already been out there. And so that's why I had talked to the experts in the field after building a good network. And I talked and asked, what is something that you want to know so that I can spend the next few years of my life focused and really passionate about it? And male survivors and victims became a topic. And so I did, as the more digging that I did into it and the more experts that I had spoken to, it really made me realize that it really is a gap that no one really speaks about. It's not even in a lot of legislation, in different international organizations don't really want to cover it. And then even in our media or our society, it's just a topic that is very stigmatized. And so that's why I really wanted to cover it academically. But then after doing over 70 interviews with male survivors and experts over the last 3 years, I have really grown a big heart and passion for this field, and really hoping that there is social change to come.
Ena, that's so smart. I'm so happy that you filling in the gaps, because many junior researchers come along and they say, I'm going to do research in, trafficking and violence. And it's like, okay, but I think we've answered that. Like, I think we know that there's violence involved, psychological violence, physical violence, emotional violence. This has been answered, but you actually went after some gaps that we had. And so what were the findings? And by the way, what are you getting your master's degree in?
So my master's degree is in human security and peace building. And I was really passionate about adding that human trafficking specialization aspect to it through the thesis aspect of it. So that will be quite good, because it's a very new topic that is not very well known. And so it really looks into the human security aspect of these topics. So it's really looking into the person itself and not seeing them as a threat, but seeing them as how can we assist them and help them through this process. But the very exciting news about the thesis is it's not only 70 interviews and really going into the needs of these survivors, but it actually has led to a side project, which is on familiar abuse, which has turned into trafficking. So, for example, when the family commits the abuse against the boy child, and then from there, they go on forward to traffic their own child. And so we had 10 survivors, which had come out of the original group of 70 that I had interviewed. And so this research was actually done with 2 others. So I had a second co-writer and editor for this research, which was Andres Buenaventura. This was an Interpol official with 10 years experience in policy analysis and international law enforcement cooperation and journalism. So he has a lot of experience in this field, as well as our supervisor and co-writer, senior researcher, Dr. Glenn Miles, who has worked on this issue around children at risk and vulnerable adult youth for over 25 years now. And he has a particular focus on boys, young men, transgendered, and worked with a lot of NGOs across the world, and especially in Southeast Asia. And it was actually from his research in Lab 146 that inspired me to become a researcher in this field. And so I'm very lucky to have him as a mentor, both in this research side project with Andres as well, but then also on the thesis itself. So I've been very lucky to have these people involved in our projects.
Yeah, I know Dr. Glenn Miles. He's a very intelligent guy. He's been involved for a number of years, and yeah, you're lucky to be connected with him. And so, tell us what you found with the 70 people, the 70 males that you interviewed, and then tell us about the 10 people that were carved out because there was familial trafficking. So, what did you find with the 70?
So with the 70, 40 of them were the survivors of abuse and trafficking. So 12 of the 40 were trafficking survivors. The other 20 were my expert group. So that they had to have a minimum of 3 years of experience, specifically with male survivors and victims. So back to the group of 40, what I had learned from them, it was quite a bit. So we had learned that through their stories that it was quite important to not only listen to, to actively listen to their stories, but that actually they used the research as their own form of therapy, of their own form of healing. And so it really showed myself and my team that it is so important to not only like listen and believe survivors, but to kind of go forward with them on their healing journeys and to see what has been helpful and what has been detrimental in that. And so this research really looked into those key aspects of what had been helpful. For example, a trauma-informed individual, someone with specialized training, or what had been detrimental, for example, a child going into the ER room full of what I call visual indicators. So, bruises, injection sites, pains all over the body, and yet no one kind of pays attention and then just lets them go. And I had a case for a trafficking survivor where they had gone to the ER room with all these indicators and had even disclosed to the hospital staff that they were being trafficked, only to be returned back to their trafficker and then further harmed, and it further continued their trafficking. So it just shows how much this information is needed out there to let our frontline workers know, and to not have a bias towards male victims, not to think, they're guys that cannot be victimized. They're only the perpetrators. And that was actually one of our big key findings. It is this personal bias that a lot of our frontline workers hold, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's medical staff, or even mental health professionals, just because they may not personally believe that a male can be victimized or that a female cannot be a perpetrator. That does not mean that is not the case. Mm-hmm. And so that was very valuable information, which then led to, as you had mentioned, the group of 10. It had showed that about 9 out of the 10 cases we had female perpetrators. So they were both the abusers, the buyers, and they were also the traffickers. And so that is a really big data point to show that, this is not just a male-dominated, abuse field. It's not just men running this. This can also be females perpetrating to children, no matter what the gender is. And so it was very important to show that as well.
And so 9 out of the 10 people that had been trafficked through familial means, women were involved. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. So in 10 out of the 10 cases, there were men involved. Mm-hmm. So like the father, the uncle, grandfather, male buyers, for example. But in 9 out of those same 10 cases, there was also female perpetrators. So the mother, the aunt, a female buyer, a female trafficker that then took it from the mother. So you can see that, this is not just a gendered thing. This crime has no gender. It's a perpetrator can be anyone, and a victim can be anyone. And so I thought that personally was very important to highlight, so that especially, for example, in law enforcement, when a survivor comes forward and says, my mother has been abusing me or has been trafficking me, to actually have that being taken seriously. And we have a lot of these cases where, a lot of our survivors went forward to law enforcement when they were children or even as adults, told their story, and then were pretty much laughed out of the building, or that couldn't happen, or we're not going to take it that, seriously, or even from, people in the medical field, or even people in the mental health field. So very common stories, but very sad to see that, if we do not have trauma-informed training, or if we keep those biases, that this can just keep happening to so many children for the next few generations.
Well, I have so many questions, but I only have so little time. So I'm trying to figure out which ones to ask and not ask. So tell me the age range of the people in your study, and what countries did you focus on, or what countries did they come from, the majority?
Mm-hmm. So I was very open in my research because I wanted to throw a really wide net out there, but of course it had to be 18 and above. And so a lot of our participants are from, age 24, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years old. Mm-hmm. And that really shows us that a lot of these men from 50 and up, 40 and up, they have held on to these stories and have not disclosed to anyone for decades on decades. It also shows the dissociation involved of not even having a memory that this is happening until a trigger comes up. And then all of a sudden they think they're going crazy from all these memories that they think aren't real. But then it also kind of shows that there's some hope from the younger generations in their 20s and 30s that are getting support, that are telling others. It shows that people that really are trying to get healing early on and telling their stories, that they can start really living the life that they really want to, and of course go through their own personal healing journey and survivorhood journey, but that there is hope for anyone at any stage. And so that's my biggest hope for everyone as well.
I mean, what were the age ranges did they report when this happened? From age what to what, probably?
Yeah, so that's actually an unfortunate statistic. So I think the youngest that I have is 1 month old, 1 month to 2 month old infant from when the abuse first began. And then I have survivors that this goes on for multiple years. This is never just like a one-time incident. Mm-hmm. It goes from childhood, many starting from 4, 6, 8, going into their early teen years. And then it even goes further. So I have some that it's, at age 19, at age 20, it continues. I even have a few survivors that were then abused again at age 50, at 60 in doctors' offices and things like that. And so I want to, focus that it's not just like a one-time thing. This can happen at any age. But for this group, is very, very young. And so that just shows how big of an issue this is.
And what countries did your participants come from?
So for this study, it was more North American. So most of the participants come from Canada and the United States. And then we had a few from the African region, a few from Europe, and a few from Asia. But the majority is United States. And
then you mentioned earlier on that out of the 40, 12 or so were trafficking. Did you notice any differences between those who were reported abuse and those who reported they were trafficked?
Yes, it's quite interesting because it's more of like a continuum. So for a lot of the abuse survivors that were abused by their families, it seems that in parallel, the survivors of trafficking that were also abused by family, it just kind of continues further and further up. So like once the family realizes they can make money off of their child, or that they can, sell their child for drugs or exchange them, then there's this big hop between just going from abuse to then going into trafficking. And so a lot of the survivors on both groups, they do have the same like core emotion of shame, of a lot of pain, a lot of trauma, keeping it in, not disclosing. But I found that it only gets more further into violent like hurt towards the survivor once it goes to trafficking. So for example, abuse survivor might be fearful of the embarrassment or the dishonor it might bring to the family, or what if someone finds out, whereas the fear associated with trafficking is more fearful for their life, fearful for their family's lives. Even if it is the family committing these crimes, there's still that trauma bond with their family. And it's just accelerating those emotions and just, bigger and stronger fears and more of a bigger trauma bond. And it's just taking that same abuse that someone could have experienced and then just going significantly further when it's more of a daily occurrence, and then bringing it to a larger group of perpetrators.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think, and I may have misspoke, is it 12 trafficking victims or 10 trafficking victims, or am I getting that confused?
No, it's so it is a group of 10 trafficking victims that had familiar abuse, so their families trafficking them. And then the other two were another 2 cases that did not involve families. But so it's 12 in total with the larger study, and then 28 abuse, so 40 in total for the large study. And then the side study had only 10, with the focal point of family being the big aspect.
Okay, that makes sense. And it makes sense that somebody is vulnerable earlier on because abuse has occurred, and then there's opportunity that enters into the situation, and then there's trauma. I really like the way you described some of the differences between, a lot of the commonalities between abuse victims and trafficking victims, but some of the differences in terms of shame and types of shame between abuse and trafficking. So, and you're right now located, you're not in Canada right now. Where are you?
I'm in Lyon, France right now.
Okay. And what are you doing in France?
I am working for Interpol again. So yeah, very excited to be back.
And so what do you see yourself doing in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, I'm very passionate about this topic, so I'm really hoping to continue on to more research in this field. I'm looking into potentially doing a sub-research on female perpetrators, because that was a very big side topic. I'm hoping to further into a PhD as well in this topic, in this field, and so hopefully into teaching more people about human trafficking, raising more awareness on male victimization, because I found that I have a very big passion for this now.
And so for somebody that's out there that is also a master's degree student, or maybe they're thinking about going back to college, or they're getting their bachelor's degree, and they're interested in international work, how would somebody like them get involved in an international organization like Interpol?
That's actually quite interesting that you say that, because it's actually quite simple. It's just literally a Google search. You can type in whatever international organization that you're interested in, and then just write careers right after that, job right after that, to get to the exact page that you want to apply to those jobs. But the only thing that I would recommend is to really tailor yourself to what you want to be doing. So, for example, I was very, very interested in Interpol when I was a lot younger, but I wanted to make sure that I had a master's degree in human security, that I had field experience in human trafficking before I even applied to the internship in vulnerable communities and working on projects on human trafficking and crimes against children. And so that's what I would recommend is, if you are interested in this, to really go after it, because you never know, you might have the lucky chance to get into it. But to really kind of tailor your CV or your resume to make sure that you are one of those top picks, because it is a very competitive field.
Yeah. And if I'm interested in an internship, do I do the same thing that you suggested? Just type in the international agency I'm interested in, but then look for internships?
Yeah, so they're just right on Google. A lot of people are very surprised by that. I was very surprised by that. It was a friend of mine that had let me know about that, which is how I applied. But yeah, you can do that, whether it's for the United Nations, for IOM, for even the FBI. You can pretty much do that. Just a quick Google search with the name of the organization you want to work for, and just jobs or careers. And so it's very good for anyone that would love to be in this field. But I would definitely recommend starting out in an internship, so that you have a taste to see if you even like doing that work, if you like being in that field. or if you like being international and going around the world.
Well, thank you so much, Anna, because that is exactly what some people may need to hear who want to just have an adventure, but also are very compassionate and social justice minded. This is a way to give back, see the world, have an adventure, and just perhaps launch your career in something that you love to do. So thank you so much, Anna, and thank you for the information about male victims and also about familial trafficking, because once again, we don't know a lot about it, and you are contributing to that literature and filling that gap. So appreciate your work and appreciate you so much, and stay safe in France. I'm sure it's beautiful and the work you're doing is meaningful. So thank you so much.
No, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be on.
That was Ena Lucia Mariaca, who did some research with Dr. Glenn Miles to fill some of the gaps that we don't know a lot about still. So this research is so critical to adding to our knowledge base. You know, men and boys are also sexually assaulted, sexually abused, and sexually exploited. And many of their feelings and reactions and trauma are the same as other survivors, but they also face additional challenges. And that's because of societal attitudes and stereotypes about men and masculinity. So according to the organization RAIN, which stands for Rape, Abuse, Incest National Network, some victims can suffer anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, flashbacks, eating disorders, avoiding people or places that remind them of the assault or the abuse, having concerns or questions about their own sexual orientation, fearing that the worst will happen, and having some kind of sense of a shortened future, feeling less of a man, or that they no longer have control over their own body, especially if they had a physical reaction to the abuse, feeling like they're on edge or unable to relax, or having difficulty sleeping, or having a sense of blame and shame over not being able to stop the abuse or the assault or the exploitation, maybe withdrawing from relationships or friendships, or having an increased sense of isolation, and then having a fear of judgment or disbelief by other people. So what should we do about that? Well, if we're professionals, we do what we do with any survivor of trauma and abuse. We listen. We validate their feelings. And even if we're not professionals and they want to share, we listen and we validate their feelings. We say, I believe you. We express concern. We say, I care about you. I'm here for you. And unless we're professionals, we don't ask about the details. And even if we are professionals, we ask about the details for a particular purpose and not just our own interest. And then if we're professionals, we link them to the appropriate services and we do the appropriate assessments. If we're not professionals, then we can start to look for those type of services, those type of professionals that we can connect our friend or our family member to so that they can get the help that they need. I'm so thankful that this research is being done because it helps us learn a little bit more and become more effective in our work. Until next time, the fight continues. Let's not just do something, let's do the best thing. If you like this episode of Emancipation Nation, please subscribe and I'll send you the weekly podcast. Until then, the fight continues.